Welcome to our continuing conversations with Joe Visconti. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, hello, hello.
Sounds like you had another exciting vision of sorts, a dream vision. And so I think today your topic that you we just discussed a little while ago is love. And when we talk about love, I get all excited. I get so excited I put on my fancy chieftain cloak, okay? This very fancy coat because why? There's nothing higher than love. And so you're going to tell us a little bit about your vision, and then we're going to talk about how that translates into the modern world and what we can do to actually have an encounter with the being of love. So tell us about what happened to you last night.
Sure, I've had these things, as I'm sure many of your listeners and viewers have had over the years. But the more we've been doing these podcasts with you and John, for I would say the last 2 months, which is for the first time in my life expressing Rudolf Steiner anthroposophy to the general public, completely concealing it my entire life, something's opened up with me and my ability to put together or have visions and see things that normally come in meditation. So this is not some kind of ESP, but when they overwhelm you, uh, and the more I think we're able to give to the public, the more we're able to open up. It's kind of like when the Beatles talked about they wrote all their best music when they were in hotel rooms traveling. After they got comfortable in their big mansions in England, they had a harder time creating. Something about delivering to the public, which we'll talk about, I think is for me anyway. You guys do this all the time, but for me has really opened up conceptual thinking totally different than I get it on other aspects of my being. But last night I was totally conscious and love came in, but not, and you and I talked earlier, it's kind of hard to explain this. And so we'll do our best because it really is feeling, and that it's not head dominant or even will dominant, it's feeling dominant. And so there's a political aspect to this. I'm not going to get into that at the moment, and how love is being used, a love of humanity, how pretentiousness can occur with this. But what came into me was the power, and then the powerlessness at the same time of love. And I described to you, Doug, on our phone conversation a couple hours ago, and it's so hard to put into words, but the intelligence of love, Christ being the being of love, and how he works as the Lord of karma, and how love between people and our karma is being worked out and can be worked out greater and to the benefit, as Rudolf Steiner said, to the most people on the planet. In other words, the Rudolf Steiner explains that Christ used our karma, and if we would work with him, he uses it to affect the most positive changes in the world that he can with our sins, karma, our errors. And so it's exponential. Um, but what came to me was the intelligence, this divine power. And also, as I kind of woke up this morning, it was resounding in me more and more. And I started to Google and use my left brain. And I ran across the timelessness, the out of time of love. And nothing will ever do the justice of what I felt, because once we fully incarnate in the morning, the left brain takes over, materialistic thought lines take over, and then you, in a weird way, just start to get caught up in the timeline of your life and the daily life of the world. That stream of that materialism has completely captured. But yet we know during the daytime, you and I discussed how you could look at your child, and we all do this all day long anyway, but it's a out of time experience with the etheric body of Christ. With our etheric body, it's not bound um, by the linear, sequential cause and effect of I will call the left brain, the materialistic realm. But all day long, we're doing this. We pop in and out of time. And I'm going to kind of throw this to you at the present time. But what came to me in a nutshell was the power and powerlessness of love out of time affecting this world, and it being the being of Christ who quickly is trying to be replaced by dark forces. And then the manipulation of love in the name of love the atrocities that are being done in our world.
Yes, when you say love, of course, we think of the Bible in Corinthians, the passage that, we must count on faith, hope, and charity or love. And those are the three aspects that you just described. If you can get beyond space, if you can get beyond time, if you can get beyond consciousness, you can start to experience, probably not even understand, but experience love. Most people, and as you pointed out, love arises in the heart we think it's a feeling, but just like your dream, your vision, it was an inspiration and it was almost ineffable. You can't put it into words. If you tried to put it into words, the only analogy I can give you is love is like an enzyme. Now, I know that sounds pretty ridiculous, but an enzyme has infinite power, it is immortal, and it can affect 1 trillion things per second as a catalyst, giving energy to all trillion of those cells that is being affected by an enzyme in your body, and yet it does not diminish. So, if you really want to understand love, of course, it is the golden rule, and it's found in the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Luke. Love your Lord, love God, your Lord, with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Who can do that? First off, think of that when you're going to think of your mind, your heart, and your strength. Of course, all of those are in your soul. So your mind is your thinking. Uh, so it's the thinking, feeling, and willing must become aligned with wisdom, and then you have the wisdom to know that you are not love. When you love, you are divine. Not that you are divine, but it comes through you because you become empty. And if you really want the very best description of love that I've ever read in my whole life, even though I am biased, this is Dr. Tyler Gabriel, The Gospel of Sophia. And in the chapter on Sophia as love, probably the most profound thing I've ever read in my life. And we have friends who picked up this book and became Sisters of Sophia. And one of them, a person who is one of the most loving people that we know, said, "Oh, I haven't read the whole book. I opened the book to the chapter on love, and I just keep reading it over and over and over again because why? You cannot comprehend love."
Right, right. And you cannot, and the best you can share it on Valentine's Day or a birthday or kissing your kids when they get off the school bus. But it is something that I felt in all of this moment. I had no left brain last night. This morning, the left brain kicked in, and I started analyzing blah blah blah. But it was showing me was this being of love within us, and then if you try to use it or own it or anything with it, you can't. It's selfless in a minute. It's almost like this other experience I've had many times in my life. Barely can I can conjure it, but maybe some of you, and I'm going to say something I've never told anyone. Maybe at home you've done this and you didn't know what it was, but contacting your higher self, music can do it to you. It does it to all of us. We all can feel the same song across the civic center or across the country on the radio. We hear it, we all fall into this rhythm. And I've had this experience, which is um, miraculous, and I want to share it today because I haven't really shared it with anyone who would understand, nor you, Doug, or John. And it has to do with the higher self. And here's what happens to me, and we can talk about this too, and you can put different words to it. I've tried to analyze it later after the experience, but I'm fully conscious here now. I could actually imagine a scene of self-sacrifice and love of God. I'll try to articulate this. It's almost as bad as my vision. And what will happen if I get in this very quickly, can it be done? I could conjure it. Um, and I know it's a contact with the higher self because I'll be almost electrocuted. I've been electrocuted before as an electrical engineer, but it's not electricity that kills. It's what we all get when we hear maybe the Star Spangled Banner. It's called goosebumps, and something comes over you. We've all had it. You may not be able to create that, but it can be created. And when it is created, not one part of it can come from an imagination or a scene in your mind, even if it's pretend and fiction. You'll see it in love stories and movies and heroes. You'll feel this selflessness and you'll start to tingle through your body. I've been able to have it happen to me for maybe 6 minutes the most, which is very hard. What'll happen is the spirit descends upon you, subconscious mind moves out of the way, and miracles begin to happen immediately in your life. Whatever you're working on, whatever's coming your way, you'll know there's a connection between having this experience and events in your life that will affect money, will affect anything, but you cannot know that or use any of that like rubbing a genie, having a wish. It won't work that way. It's complete love descending upon us. It happens to everybody. They don't know what it is and they don't monitor what occurs in their life because they were inspired by music, inspired by color, or an act, as Lucifer, Rudolf Steiner speaks about Lucifer being completely transformed when he sees Christ crucified, who he knew that was the place he needed to be. And Lucifer falls into, we'll talk about that too, into realizing, because he's a god, that was what he deserved. And then you see the self-sacrifice of the saints after Christ that come in, which is a Luciferic impulse to sacrifice, duty, chivalry. It follows through with the Knights in the Grail. But this whole thing can be found listening to the Star Spangled Banner by Whitney Houston. You can go Google it right now and just listen. And if you're not inspired, it doesn't feel like America per se. It's really not the word she's saying. It's the tone, it's the truthfulness, the purpose, the blessedness, the innocence, the giving of entire selflessness. And you witness, every one of us witness that our soldiers, people have died. You could cry. Tears will come over you because you begin to cry at the complete sacrifice of men before us and saints. I know I'm being a little wordy here, but that feeling I've had one way in my life. Last evening, it transformed into something which was trying to explain to me the wedding between knowledge and love, between the things we're studying, Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophical leading thoughts, Acts of the Apostles, all of it, how the knowledge, using the heady part without materialistic thinking, abstract thinking, but with spiritual thinking. So what occurred to me last evening was the recognition that the love, the challenge for the night of the Grail will be to feel that love that I knew I've had many times before with listening, like the Star Spangled Banner as an example, and wedding that to knowledge, because when knowledge comes in, we could hardly control the flow of it. It's not using the left brain, the linear sequential thinking. So I knew last night what was experiencing was the ability in the moment to know thoughts and be part of them, as we all are every day intuitively. That path versus the path of using our brain, 2 and 2 is 4, or your kids and all of that. So knowledge was it was showing me that knowledge, wisdom, spiritual truths, the path is now from the heart to the head. And and I haven't been able to articulate it even this morning with anyone and yourself. Um, but the feeling of love, which the heart will be transformed, the feeling of love will bring intelligence. And we do know that we get epiphanies, but how we can participate without losing consciousness, or I hate to say a path, but a path, without falling off the path as it's occurring. How do we go from that feeling of love that is allowing these things to come in without us using our abstract thinking?
Yes, we could be here for weeks trying to describe love because I can give some analogies, and what you're talking about is, as people can sense, it's very hard to put into words. So there is a path. Steiner has described some of this path, but it's most difficult. I'm going to give you some difficult challenges here. Um, for instance, I have taught a long time Waldorf teachers and anthroposophy and so on and so forth. And I love to ask this question. I say, love. We all talk about love. Now, where can you find love? Is it in your thinking? Is it in your feeling? Or is it in your will? 100% of the people I've asked that question all choose feeling. But remember, feeling in the dual world, the dualistic world, is bifurcated so that you generally think that, well, your feelings are generally aligned with either sympathy or antipathy. You either like it or you dislike it. And you think that if you're in the middle, then, or that if you like it, which generally, what do we like? We like things just like ourselves. So if somebody's like us, we like them. But in general, it isn't really just limited to earthbound feeling. This is a divine feeling, as you pointed out. This is an inspiration that a lot of times comes first by harmonizing. So when we think about the hierarchy, the top rank of the hierarchy are willpower, the thrones, harmony, the cherubim, and love, the seraphim. So if you have love flowing through you, it's higher than anything a human can do, but it isn't coming from your feelings. You don't have adequate enough human feelings to even say that you can identify with the force of love coming through you. It's like the example of an enzyme. It's infinite. And what do we do as a human? We say, oh, I'm going to give you exactly the amount of love that you give to me in return. That's not love. That is basically just your security for your desire. And so many times that's what people think love is. Matter of fact, one day I asked an engineer, I posed this question to my children and an engineer who lives next door. And he says, well, I would define love by love needs to be at least 51%. You see how an engineer
Well,
calculated that?
I said that to you today. I said there's no stock market for love. There's no trading. There's no numerical equivalent um, turning the quantitative into the qualitative. This is what the dark forces seek to do. Take the qualitative, take love, if they could, and utilize it. You see it in marketing. You see it across the spectrum of Madison Avenue. You see it in politics today, where they're trying to capture this life force also of love. But the wedding, what came to me today was that wedding between knowledge, and it came in a flash. I saw it. That it was, how do you, it was actually a question, almost like Parsifal was asked. Instead of who does it serve, I heard something more of like, how how do you combine or not manipulate, but be part of what's occurring? How do you stay conscious in this moment of these things happening from the hierarchies? As I said earlier, the higher self, these higher beings come down. But if we can tune ourselves even to the mundane, and you don't study Steiner, but you watch a movie or you read a book or you're inspired by something you see in life and some sacrifice of someone, some hero, whatever it is, you'll fall into that moment where it's all around us. It's happening all day long. And it's something that people don't know, that it's transformative. Almost like Rudolf Steiner's works we discussed this morning are transforming our beings. The knowledge themselves, I don't hate to say information, but the living being of these words are transforming parts of our bodies. And so also are the examples of human beings, whether they're a saint that's passed away or they're someone that's doing something, or you see a baby or a puppy and you just see an act of kindness and love. It is much more transformative for our personal lives, because it can't be, it's like light, it goes everywhere. And it really started to make me think, as I woke up using my left brain this morning, about Christ, about karma, about world karma, of how Christ does what we spoke about, tries to use does use our karma for the highest good and purposes exponentially. Otherwise, if you think about it, our sins are so many and so great. And not because they're religious sins, because we know in our conscience it's wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I probably hurt that person, even though I thought I was doing a good thing, and I harmed them. And all these different things that we do every day, there's no way that can be corrected, not forgiven as much as corrected, and healing and remedy occur. We're seeing this in politics and in law today. All the things that are happening on both sides of the aisle, everywhere in the world, there's no legal remedy. We're in uncharted waters on that level where there's no remedy. And then we turn in our personal life, there are remedies. Go up to someone and say, you're beautiful. You look great today. Complimenting people. Nobody's doing it anymore. Truthfully complimenting them, telling them that you love them. A friend of mine was on the phone the other day. It was a woman, but just a friend, but we've known it forever. I says, all right, I'll see you later, Debbie. I love you. And I would have never said that, but I've been starting to say, you know what? Those things mean something. You do love them, but we don't say it. So we're ashamed of love. Why are we ashamed of expressing love?
Well, you've said a bunch of magic words right there. Let's see if I can address some of them. You said quantity, quality, which is the Aristotelian ladder of the way you understand the world. So we start off with quantity, and then if we can rise up, we go to quality. If you can rise up beyond that, you go to relationships, which I'm going to come back to because you mentioned the Grail and wedding people. So once you get above quantity, quality, relationship, then you come to space, time, and consciousness. And all of them have to be merged before you can still go higher into the willpower of the divine and then into harmony and then into love. So, what is love? Love can't truly be explained. We could go on and define this forever. But the deal is that essentially, if you could understand that the spiritual beings have wed us, they have donated, they have loved us, they have given their willpower through the thrones, they're called, to create our whole world. And then our whole world is kept together by this harmony between every single atom, as we're told by superstition science. If we disturb an atom, we can create a chain reaction that creates an atomic bomb. So if we disturb harmony, then we can, in fact, destroy things. But if we align ourselves with understanding the harmonious union or the mysterious conjunction, as it's called in alchemy, or the wedding, or what is described as New Jerusalem descending, and then we wed, we go to a wedding. It's all about a wedding, the alchemical wedding. And so, what is this wedding?
Yes, let's stay there. Stay right there. Go. That's it. You got it.
It is about wedding. We have to wed ourselves, but we can't understand anyone. We don't know who we are until we see the love flowing through us mirrored back to us. That's the only thing we're ever going to know about ourselves, is what other people reflect to us by our capacity to let love flow through us. And when we get identified with it, with our selfish demands and our balance sheet of love, that is not love. That is economics. That's quantity. Quality would be to realize that love is not you. Love is like forgiveness. I mean, what is a wedding? What is a marriage? It's about forgiveness. And we cannot forgive. The divine moves through us to forgive. We can forget as humans, but we cannot forgive unless we have the divine. We cannot love unless we have the divine. Now, in nature, what happens in wedding? Every carbon atom, all of, let's say, all of living nature, all of biological nature is based upon carbon and its selflessness to bond with anything that comes near. It's like water. Anything you pass through water, the water becomes that. And any thought you put into water, it becomes that. Same thing with carbon. I call carbon the Christ in the elemental world because it is 100% selfless. And without carbon, there would be no life. Just like without silica, there would be no inorganic life. Without carbon, there'd be no organic life. Well, think about that for a second. Who can understand that? We don't even know what an atom is. We have no, the scientists are just imagining it. These are their little, but if you could understand the true hierarchy and the way they manifest and the way the Trinity manifests through the hierarchy, then you'd understand that love is the what is it? It's the august master binding of all, according to the Chaldean oracles. And so when you are loving, if you can, it defies time and space because you can love from one incarnation to the next. I can love someone across the world and they can feel it. This is now known. It's called quantum entanglement. Once you have bonded with somebody and you have their resonance, there's no limit in time or space. There's no limit in consciousness. So love is what is behind me in this statue. That's Avalokiteshvara. I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again. I would always say to the great clairvoyant lamas and geshes and Tibetan teachers, what about Christ? And they go, well, I don't know anything about Christ. And they say, but what about love? Oh, love, eternal love. Oh, yeah, Avalokiteshvara, Chinresig. And they get all worked up the second you say that, because then they'll tell you the story of Avalokiteshvara, this being that I have here in this statue. He was a human being. She was a human being because later he becomes she when he goes into the spiritual world somehow. So in the spiritual world, there's this being that was once a human who looked out upon the world and saw all the suffering. And it was so terrible because he was trying to look in all directions because there was suffering in all directions, that you can see that his head split open and grew into 11 heads so that he could look in all directions and see all the suffering. And then out of his body came 1,000 arms to serve what the suffering people need. And in each palm of each hand is a spiritual weapon or a spiritual tool that can then help whatever that suffering is. So if you want to love, all you have to do is split your head into 11 parts, get 1,000 arms, and give every person suffering the cure, the antidote. That's all it takes.
Well, you brought in carbon, and that set my mind afire here a second ago, and I thought of money. All things were made through him. Without him, nothing was made that was made. Carbon. John 1. And what is money? Nothing more than decaying light, which is electricity. And you're seeing it digitized where all things want to be made by money, not by the carbon. In other words, look at the war being sold for money, being quantified, the value of 30 pieces of silver. You see this. So what really is money? What people want money. I want to win $1 million with a certain earth value in a selfish world of economics. But in the world of carbon, you can have all kinds of furniture and stuff and plants. You could be a billionaire in carbon, and but it's free, as you said. It's selfless. So the world is ours, and one of the temptations of Christ: bow down to me, and you will have the kingdoms of the world. He already had the kingdoms of the world. If you really look at this, I'm having revelations every time we talk. It's like, wait a minute, yeah. So what is it again? Like love, it's a knockoff. So the carbon brings the life force. Money becomes something that can be used, and there's good money too. There's benevolent, there's holy money. People, I think this Rudolf Steiner speaks about that. So what is it? It's the selflessness and the scheming and um, the joining the certain clubs. And if you join the club against something else, then the money will become in a mutual fund. So you see the selfishness. Anytime the selfishness, it could bring the economy down, but it's supposed to mirror the life. And money wants to go where money wants to go. Money's not loyal to your wallet or my wallet. They say that it will go wherever. You leave it outside, it's gone. So, but if you really think about it, again, the selflessness, and selfishness, you see it again everywhere it shows up. And then people fear, well, if I don't have it, I can't live in the world. If I don't mechanize my life by the hour and the job, and the stress and the pressure coming on us now with inflation caused by this selfishness that's gone amok, then I won't be able to sleep. I won't be able to feed the kids. Then I'll turn to government handouts because the government is love. Now the government becomes the paternoster, and the elected officials are in the state U.S. Capitol. All of them are the paternoster of the father figure, and the mother is the policy making and the administration that administers it. You see the father and the son, but it's supposed to serve. But now it's become a bad father, a bad mother. What do they call it? Parents that neglect her. But again, every move you make with love, and we've been saying, everyone's been saying that. Well, but what does that mean to love? I'm trying to love. I did the best I can, and people don't. They're trying to quantify something that can't be quantified, and they feel if they give it, they'll be hurt, or they won't have anything. Not realizing that we're just that channel that higher powers want to come through, and we're blocking the way. We need to get out of the way of love. And I told someone the other day, and it fell out of my mouth. I said, I need to make a good impression on myself. In other words, we need, if you do it jokingly, we are in our own way, constantly in our own way, and not in that position to say, when you brought it up earlier, I love myself. What does that mean? You don't beat yourself up. Is it the same love that you would have for the world? So looking at the love of an animal, love of a baby, love of all these different things, again, the quantification and caste system of love, it doesn't have to be that way. And but I think the fear is, if people are afraid of the spirit, they're afraid of love.
It's shocking to think someone could be afraid of love, but you're absolutely right. And you've also mentioned another magic word, serve. I would oftentimes say then to people after asking them where love exists, thinking, feeling, and willing, and they all got the answer of feeling. I'd say, well, okay, fine. Then, what about when Christ says to love your enemy? Please raise your hand if you love your enemy. No one raises their hand because they're like so shocked at the thought that you can love. No, but here's the deal. Love is service. You don't have to like who you serve. And so I explain this to people and they go, oh, yeah, okay. Right. I have feelings of sympathy and antipathy, like and dislike. And if I dislike somebody, they're my enemy, but I'm supposed to love them. How do I do that? You can still practice love. You can serve without getting rid of your dislike, your antipathy. You can serve and you can forgive even with the help of the divine, but you can't do it by yourself. So if you can get yourself out of the way, or you remind me of the phrase of some of my favorite people always say, get over yourself.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we need to do with love. Get over yourself. Now let's take the Grail. When Parsifal came to the Grail castle, he was following the love of his mother and taking her advice, which was really bad advice. Don't ask questions, and just sit there. Uh, very bad news. But most people forget exactly what the outcome of the Holy Grail lore and stories all tell. Let's look at Parsifal and his brother until he accepted his black and white brother, Feraphus, who he actually had to battle with. But once he accepted him, that he was his own blood, he brought him back to the Grail Castle because he couldn't do it by himself. He had to be doing it for somebody else. You can't do it for yourself. You want to love
Yes,
yourself? Get over
that is
yourself.
that is the greatest line and an idea. You can do miracles for other people and the world. And some people said, like Jesus on the cross, don't lose your thought there for a second there, Doug, but he's helped others. Why can't he save him? Saved others. Why can't he save himself? There's something important that people have to realize, that you can't do it. And if you could do it, you're pretty evil. If you could do it for yourself, you're pretty dark.
You could be luciferically deluded. You could be aromanically obsessed or possessed. With the three temptations in the desert, Rudolf Steiner tells us the first one was Lucifer. He overcame that. The second one was Lucifer and Ahriman. He overcame that. But the third one was strictly Ahriman. Ahriman, the Lord of this world, the Prince of Darkness. We are born into our father, the devil, Satan. That's who we are living amongst. And that's to wake us up so that the evil can give us something to run up against and basically strengthen our muscles of love, which is really a muscle of surrendering to selflessness. It doesn't take anything to love except faith, hope, and charity, that you in yourself, through your actions, you are charitable to other people. So when Parsifal goes before the is in the Grail castle and goes before the procession of the Grail. He doesn't understand anything. And who is the first person who is true, who does have faith, hope, and charity? That is, I'll just give her there's a Réponse de Séance is her name, but it means the bearer of joy, who is carrying the Grail, but in different versions, she's carrying the spearhead that drips blood into a chalice. Okay, so think about that for a second. Does he get to marry her? She's the queen of the Grail. No, his brother marries her. And how is Parsifal true? Parsifal is true to his true love, which he met before he ever went to the Grail Castle. And in the end, that is his fulfillment. To become the Grail King was to stay faithful to the one he loved and to give up the Queen of the Grail, which you would think if he wants to be the King of the Grail, he should marry the Queen of the Grail. He lets his brother, Ferifus, marry the Queen of the Grail. And that is, no greater love hath a man than to give up his life for another, the Bible tells us. And that's what it's all about. You do not have to be highly developed to love. You have to be an open, empty Grail. And what is the Grail? It's your heart. It's also the cube. It's also the stone. And it's literally, according to Rudolf Steiner, carbon. It is literally carbon.
Yes.
And carbon shows us how to always bring everything in and connect it to yourself in beautiful, harmonious association, relationship. And then it is out of your loyalty that true love actually goes into higher realms. But you can't really love unless you're you have three higher selves. The second higher self is called life spirit. That is where Christ lives. He lives in what's we call the super etheric realm, or Dr. Gabriel, Tyler Gabriel tells us, Rudolf Steiner calls it the realm of spiritual economy, or the etheric sphere around the earth, or Shambhala. And in that realm, what is there? Christ, pure love. And what's he doing? Giving himself still in another sacrifice for the sake of all earth, so that we can leave entropy, the death of the earth, and enter ectropy, levity, the redemption of the earth. And that's all we're here to do. If anyone says they don't know the meaning of life, just say, oh, that's simple, love. But go
And,
ahead and try to do it.
and like the abundant life, which is everywhere in the New Testament, also the abundant life forces that I spoke about earlier when we opened up on the out of timeness, because you can't be limited by time or money. And it is out of time, but we're living in it every moment. And this is what came to me last night. Every moment, are we living in it, but we can't quantify it. And so if the brain or the mind takes over to try to, in the materialistic mind, to figure this out, immediately it'll become depressed. You'll change your subject, you'll look the other way, because you don't find value there. Because how can you value something that's immortal, that's abundant, never ending? It's so, how can you value? Think about this. It's limitless. How can you value something limitless? You can't. And a little subject here, you brought up Mr. A, I call him Ahriman. For those listening out there, they're worried about his incarnation, etc. Rudolf Steiner does mention that in the end of the earth time, I'll call it that, you can elaborate, Doug, what will occur to him, his redemption will be, he will be put to sleep. As he's tried to put people to sleep, his karma will put him to sleep. He doesn't become killed, he becomes put to sleep. The activity used against mankind karmically with world powers and world karma will put him to sleep.
So true. So true. And I must admit, I fell prey to that most of my life. I said to John and my other buddies, I am going to meet Ahriman and I'm going to work for him. I'm going to be his best lieutenant. I'm going to be his right hand. Why? So I can kill that sucker. No, that's the exact opposite of what Christ would have you do. Ahriman's here for a purpose. And the thing that Ahriman or Satan or Mephistopheles, whatever you want to call him, Angry Manu, any name you have, but it's the Lord of Darkness. What's the one thing he cannot stand? He can't even know it exists. He is totally devoid of the ability to
Love.
see Christ and
Yeah.
love. Exactly. Ahriman and Lucifer cannot see love. They cannot experience Christ. And if you have that love in your heart, there is nothing that Ahriman can do to you. So now Tyler and I are
But
working on a story where it's the biography of Ahriman. And how do we defeat Ahriman? We don't. Just like you said, we just ignore him. We mock him. We love him. We
well,
laugh at him.
Rudolf Steiner, you'll know somewhere. Sorry, folks that are listening, I can't quote the chapter and verse of this. What Rudolf Steiner speaks about in many of his lectures was, if you do encounter him, tip your hat and cross the street. Do not engage him. His genius is so powerful, it will crush you. He knows everything about each one of us. And he explains that it would be, Christ can deal with him because these are gods. We're just not up to that. But we will encounter, because eventually he will become visible in the world. And there's another lecture he speaks about, Armin must become visible. Right now, like God, he's invisible, but God did show himself in a man. And the same thing will happen. He will be forced because of this to become visible. But there is nothing to fear, because the fear is Armin. He is the spirit of fear, the embodiment of fear. That's who he is. Christ is love. And and this is, again, these are the things: humor, happiness, joy, love. They sound like words and Hallmark cards. I have been trying to figure out all day since I woke up this morning going, how the heck, think about it. How many times have you, listening at home or watching, have had that feeling of love, and it's so fainting, you could hardly, like a fairy, you could hardly hold it. It dissipates because you can't hold it. But that attempt to try to hold it, you have to allow it. And again, people in our time are fearing the spirit. They're fearing life. They're fearing all these beings are coming upon us to test us. And they're actually saying, if we listen, let it be. Let it be. Be happy. Don't worry. I mean, it's in our music. It's in our culture. And Americans really, are known for being courageous. So I really think America, beyond all the other nations at the present time with what's happening in the world, really need to play, sing, be happy, share. Don't look for a reward. The reward is that the love is coming through you. That's the reward.
Absolutely. Look at Lucifer. You could actually say Lucifer is just a baby, because what did he want? He wanted all the love that God was being given from everyone else. So he wanted that. Well, he didn't deserve it. And then what did he try to do? Oh, the big mistake of any human or anyone who is a fallen being. They tried to take love. Hello, you can't take love. Love is given freely. You can't take love from God, then the Trinity and the hierarchy, because they've already donated everything that you need for your existence. You would have no existence. You'd have no consciousness. You'd have nothing without the love you've already been given. And if you realized what that love was, you would be like this being behind me. You see the thing up on the top? Those are flames. In other words, when his head exploded and grew into 11 heads, it also burst into flames. Well, Rudolf Steiner says that and you can do this, folks, take a stethoscope, put it on your muscles, and start moving your muscles. You're going to hear sounds that will blow your mind. It is so loud. Your body is so loud with the donations being given to you every single moment of your life that if you could realize it, you would burst into flames and die. It's as simple as that. Now, what should we do? We should slowly gain the wisdom through the practice of love, of giving, not of taking, not of expecting a return, but of giving. You give, you give, you give to your enemy, especially. Don't worry about giving to the ones who are just like you, your family and your friends. That's easy. That doesn't strengthen your muscles of love. You need to give to your enemies. And the Buddhists say, if there is someone that you hate, make them your best friend, because once you've overcome that realization that the hate that you have for them is the hate you have for yourself, then you will overcome that. And so make them your best friend until your enemy has no power over you whatsoever. And when you do rise up like this, then you evolve like all the hierarchy. They all evolve. They all go up the ladder of the hierarchy, even though it's not quite up. But that's an analogy like Jacob's ladder. But what do you get? You get the wings from the practice of love, from your willpower, which is becoming divine willpower through love, through forgiveness, through grace, through mercy, through hope, faith, um, charity, all of these things basically give you the wings that you need. Even like Plato said, or Socrates said, those wings take you up into the divine world of the living archetypes. And once you have these wings, you will evolve into an angel. And once you're an angel, you cannot do anything but love unless you become selfish and you fall back and you become like Lucifer, a fallen angel, which is in fact nothing more than a childish take, take, take instead of a give, give, give.
And one of the reasons for that on the human level today in our modern time especially is not necessarily the fear of death, but the reality that we're not immortal. And with Rudolf Steiner, anthroposophy becomes the concept, the idea, the reality that we are immortal. And we have other lives, but beyond those lives, we are mortal. Beyond the lives, when we end, like Buddha, our lives, we move on to higher realms. And people would be like, but I'm going to lose this or I'm going to lose that. And they fear losing because they don't realize that they are mortal. They think it's just death if they even get there. We get there at our age now. When we're older, we start thinking about a lot more than sex when we were younger. And that's funny, the creativity of bringing life and then the fear of death. Isn't that strange how they dominate our mind? But realizing that we are mortal and that we go on and there are higher beings that are here helping us, that whole concept is what's lacking in our time, which makes people want to hold on, not give. Folks, what you're trying to be is a witness to what these powers are doing. We want to be a conscious witness and have us, because this is not our body. You didn't build it, and I didn't build this body. So I'm just riding this thing, And so we want to be a conscious witness and have the ability to know and understand and have the ability to recognize how great the love is, that, and this is what I heard last night, the intelligence of the love, the science of love, all the things, the karma of love, all these things that are working. Because people ask, well, how would God do that? There's no like Congress and there's no universities. If there is karma, if there are all these, who's keeping track of it? Where are they? Is everything invisible? I can't believe in that. You can believe in invisible substances in your being, that you don't know who put them there, but you can't believe in the invisibleness, at least of the five lower senses, of what's happening. And so what came to me last night was not just love like we know it, but actually the hierarchy of love and the intelligence, the magnitude, the activity of spiritual beings that are just, it's beyond anything we can conceive while we're incarnated in the morning.
I like what you're saying there. Intelligent design is what they call that, and it should be called intelligent love. That's what makes the cosmos work. And
Yes.
anything that they tell you about astrophysics, if it doesn't include love, a give and a take, male and a female, a positive and a negative, then that isn't going to work out. So every black hole goes to an ion jet. So there's no such thing as destruction. So Ahriman, who's incarnated now in a human body, fears what? Death, because he doesn't understand love, intelligent design of the universe. And so where there's fear, there's no love. Where there's love, there's no fear. Ahriman has no love. Lucifer has no love. They are both scaredy cats. And so you can literally go thumb your nose at these beings and they can do nothing to you.
Yeah, Rudolf Steiner does say that they don't know they can't win. This is something very important. He says they do not know. They continue their activity with resilience and they go and they believe they can win. They can't, I hate to say it like this, but win. Not a football game or something, but they cannot win, and their activity is perpetual because they're bound by what they are. They can't get out of who they are. They can't learn. They're here to do a task. They're like a ball bearing in a wheel. They're forced into that. They're not free. They may be powerful and they may be great in their realm, but they are bound to be what they are. And because of that, they hate the freedom that mankind has.
Rudolf Steiner said that in our time, it is the wisdom of the cosmic Christ, the Sophia of Christos that we need. Because why? It is the time to understand that the hierarchical donations are the wisdom that constitute us and that they have given us everything, just like the prodigal son. Before we ever left the spiritual world, the plan is there for us to return. You'd have to kind of just be a real, you'd have to mess it up not to have that happen. Lucifer and Ahriman will even be redeemed, but only once they overcome fear and can acknowledge love. But that's a little bit into the future. What we're dealing with now is wisdom, Sophia. And that's the reason that Dr. Tyler Gabriel's book, The Gospel of Sophia, the
Well,
trilogy, is so important.
and that's so exactly right, because when we think of love at Valentine's Day, it's bringing roses, it's will activity, it's sex, it's all the things that have to do with feeling and will. But we don't think of the intelligence of love, which is what we're speaking about. And if it is, it's materialistic thinking, and it's all quantified. Love can't be there either. So really, what was coming to me last night was this intelligence of love, which we're working in that world, but it came to me in a different paradigm and way that I felt it, I thought it, but what it was the missing. It's the headless horseman. We have the horse in the body, we don't have the head, which is spiritual wisdom.
Now, you said another magic word, sex. And people think sex is love because why? When you have sex and you're married and you have a child and you can create a home for that child, you're doing what? The same thing that the father of the prodigal son did. You're creating something from the beginning that you know the outcome of should be love because the child was created out of love. And in that moment, we are co creators and we think that we have great power. But unfortunately, this is the reality. Sex looks like love. It is not. It is not. Sex is not love, and creating babies is not love. No, no, it can be, but it isn't necessarily. And why do we think so? If you went into the spiritual world as a clairvoyant, what you experience is angels coming into your physicalness, or Steiner says in the spiritual world, things are just as physical as a table in this world, but that's an imagination you have to work on to understand. But when you're there, you have built a hut, let's call it. That's what is used in spiritual development. So you build a house or a palace or whatever, but that's your body. And then a spiritual being comes and then enters into you and passes through you. He says every single spiritual step you take, Sophia, the being of wisdom, passes through you and adds that to the accumulation of your merit, of your love. And so in the spiritual world, the same thing happens. So some people believe that when you can enter into another person and create something, that is basically the ultimate spiritual reality. Well, it can be, but just like we have seen now in the aberrations of the willpower, which turn out to be violence and grotesque sex, the deprecation of sexuality, and using that excuse that it's love, and so therefore it's okay. You got to love everybody in every way and everything, and blah blah blah. Well, that's true to a certain degree, but you also have to add wisdom to it. You have to have wisdom before you can understand love. Today's world has no wisdom,
Well,
and
this
that's
is,
they don't understand love.
and this is why, with all the deviancy and all of the sexuality, what's occurring today in our time, especially right now, you'll see TV ads for it with AIDS, men, they're all over. I just couldn't believe it the other night when watching to take this out. Why would there be diseases if there was love? With sexuality, why would there be diseases? Many types of diseases. If you ever look at a gynecologist questionnaire, you'd fall down. Why would there be all these things which you would see in Leviticus not to do, because it's not helpful? The body, the microcosm. So if you're doing it to you, you're doing it to the universe. It's happening in the universe. Love can't be there, of course. But what I was getting at was the will forces of sex, or if you're a saint and you're feeding the Mother Teresa feeding the poor, it doesn't matter. That will force is where love, or the idea of love is. The feeling is definitely whether it's selfish love or a higher love in the heart. But really, in our time, what's missing is that love, this intelligence of love, this anthroposophia, this being that, and we all know an act of love and friends come over to help and miracles occur. You're in a bad spot. People care about you. If they don't call it love, they call it caring, and they come and share, and your whole karma, your whole situation is changed. And when you look at it, you may not be able to find a cause why they did it. Because again, it's the headless horseman. They did it with feeling and drive, but nobody's talking about how does all this stuff get done. Um, and I know it sounds crazy, but it really is these concepts and ideas that are being brought to us. So the hierarchies donated their bodies, and now other supermen are bringing us something else of their bodies. They're bringing us something. And I mentioned this to you today about the men from the sun, which we've talked about before, the supermen from Venus, Vulcan, and Mars that are coming to bring anthroposophy. We're calling them in. The Anthroposophical Society is calling them in and has been. And people and individuals and groups and schools and biodynamic gardening, we're pulling them in. If we don't give back out to the world that's not initiated in this, we are putting these supermen in an ambush situation. This has to flow out. And I believe 2023, this 100th year that's coming of anthroposophy, is going to be a complete reversal of everything that's been and the fears of everything that's occurred in the last 100 years. And it's going to really take off to the common man. I believe it's the only answer. And it's going to come fragmented, as I spoke to you this morning, in pieces of gold, chunks of gold, and gold coins or gold chains. In other words, it's a metaphor. It's not going to come as one big Fort Knox with a bar of gold into a dogma. It's going to come out fragmented in pieces, which will drive the lefties in academia crazy, because everything in that world with Mr. A, Ahriman, has to be put into dogma, has to be put into strict fundamental processes that must be locked in sequence, time, and we're dealing with this information in that realm that's out of time, in the etheric realm with the etheric Christ. So I think the world is going to be up to here with what's happening, and more people are ready for it. And it's going to be very transformative. And we need to do it because we are ambushing these supermen. And as Steiner warns, if their gift is not picked up, and it can only be picked up if it's really spread. And if it's not correctly, then their power, their gift will turn into a horrific, destructive force in the earth realm. And I said on one of your shows earlier, if their gift and this love is so beautiful and selfless that they're giving, how could it turn in our realm into violence and destruction? How powerful and powerless at the same time is this living word?
Well, like Christ said, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve mammon and God. And serve is willpower. And willpower comes to us from the archai, the beings of time. And right now, the archangel Michael has risen from the realm of the archangels into the realm of the archai. He is the time spirit since 1879. He is the countenance of Christ. He is the face of Christ. So we have right now, through Sophia's son, the archai Michael, who is the being of cosmic wisdom, he holds this wisdom for us. We have to rise up to it. We have to evolve. By the way, the word love has the letters in it for evolve. If you can evolve, if you can love, if you can get out of the way of yourself, your lower self, and allow your higher self, your Christ and self to come through, then you are directly working with Sophia's wisdom that is being mitigated through the archai Michael, who is in fact bringing to us the solar influence of Christ, who is now encircling the earth in this heavenly realm, this realm of Shambhala, Rudolf Steiner calls it, this what Dr. Gabriel calls the super etheric realm. If we can rise to that, there is no force on earth that can stand against that, but we don't need to be in a war. Well, how did Michael, the archangel Michael, cast Lucifer to the earth? He simply took the sword of God, the word of God, the creative word, which you mentioned before, and struck not Lucifer, struck his proudful crown. but then the diadem of that crown fell to the earth and was later carved into the Holy Grail. So we're all starting off with Luciferic ideas and thinking we're all that in our thinking. And we're all engaged in Ahrimanic activity, serving Ahriman in our willpower through our unconsciousness. But if we can put Christ on the throne of our heart, if we can attain the cosmic understanding of Christ, the cosmic Christ, through the being of wisdom, Sophia, all we have to do is look into nature, whether it be enzymes or whether it be epithelial cells or whether it be the carbon and magnesium, it doesn't matter. You will find that the entire cosmos is created out of love. And it is the most powerful thing that can possibly ever happen to you. And all you have to do is awaken yourself to surrender to the love that wants to flow through you to be the divine on earth with love, with forgiveness, mercy, grace, and all of the divine virtues. It's really very quite simple. And so I just am thrilled that you brought this topic today and thrilled that we had a conversation beforehand to warm us up to this because as you can see, I'm just getting very excited about
Yeah.
this topic. And as you know, that means I could probably go on for another few days especially speaking with you because you always bring such great topics. So, Joe, I want to thank you for this continuing conversations with you, and that the spiritual world is so kind to inspire you, whether in day visions or night visions or whatever, to come up with really what I call hot topics. And love is the hottest topic of all. So, thank you, Joe. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Doug.